You are listening to Modern Retrospect, retro hits and modern bits. I'm Yovan.
And I'm Joseph. More often than not recently, we find ourselves starry-eyed at the extensive special sales of video games. This episode, we plan to dig into what we find as quality games, whether they are primed for a buy on sale, and when you should probably hold back on that promising price when your backlog wants your attention first.
If you like what you have been listening to so far, subscribe, rate us, or leave a message if you are feeling extra generous.
There's a sea of games out there. Let's dive right in. So, more so than any other time in history, the market has been, or is currently right now, packed and bursting at the seams with game content. Games come out every other, if not every week, and there's always something new around that next digital corner. For gamers, it's like a constant stream of joy and excitement, which is definitely something I feel all the time recently, but it's mixed with kind of an astonishing amount of bamboozlement of when do I buy it, should I buy it, and do I have time to play it? I'm sure you kind of feel something very similar. I think we mentioned it in episode 6, just do we even have time to play these games in some cases? So how do you kind of feel with like the constant stream of games coming? Like, do you feel bombarded and kind of what is your mentality about like the whole thing of what you want to get and when you should get it?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. There's way too many games compared to the free time I have. And the irony is when I was a kid, I had a lot less games, but I had a lot of free time, right? But now I have the money to buy more games than I did when I was a kid, but I have a lot less time. So it's a kind of like a cruel joke. But what I do now is I almost kind of collect games. You know, I see a game or I hear about a game and I want it and I have the money to get it usually, but I almost get it with the acknowledgement that I might not get to play it for a while or in some cases ever. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's I think it's gotten harder these days for the reason that you're right that as we get older, you know, we have more money to do it. And then you have the indie market, right? The indie market and companies have kind of come into full swing over the last decade. I feel like it was a lot smaller way back then. Like it was, more niche, right? When people talk about indies, it was like a niche market. And now these days it's huge. It's booming so much that you have the big companies promoting them to like fill in those gaps where, you got AAA games that are being worked on that are spaced out throughout the year. And there's still a lot of them. But you have these really great quality indie games now. And
for sure.
Oh yeah, especially because a lot of them actually started on Kickstarter. I remember when that was like the main thing I would hear about for indie games, and now there's so many that I feel like I start collecting so much because they're cheaper, right? And they go on sale a lot. So in regards to the highlights for some of these indies, I mean, we're talking some of these indies are, you would think that they would like be shorter games, but some of these are actually really, really long games.
Yeah, and maybe this is not a great analogy, but it reminds me of kind of how TV shows now are almost indistinguishable from movies in some cases as far as quality. So, back in the day, it was 100% clear that this was a TV show due to the budget, quality, actors maybe, etc., versus a movie. I mean, there's a clear distinction. And early on in an indie scene, there's a very clear distinction as far as maybe some quality in some cases or a lot of cases, and especially budgets and other stuff. This was an indie game. It might have been a brilliant indie game like Braid and, some others that stand out during the time, but it was still very much an indie game in scope and budget and so on compared to AAAs at the time. And while indie games in general still have modest budgets, and they're not competing with a Resident Evil 8, Village or Monster Hunter. But, there's quite a few indie games that are very high quality, have nice little budgets, and can compete with the big boys in a lot of ways. It's very interesting to see, and, I'm glad. It makes me happy to see that.
Yeah, because I'd say way back then when I started hearing about indies the most, I think the biggest thing that stood out to me at the time was Shovel Knight, right? That, I forget, is it 8-bit or is it 16-bit, the graphical style? Do you remember? That's one thing I always forget, if it's 8-bit or 16-bit.
I guess it's going for like a mesh. It's really meant to elicit 8-bit feels. although 8-bit systems could never get close to what Shovel Knight's really doing. So,
exactly.
But,
and I remember that was like the biggest thing back then for an indie Kickstarter, which is booming into like its own franchise, and Yacht Club Games is like its own publisher now. It's very impressive that we grow from these indie games where usually a lot of indie games pick a pixel art or a very clean, simple art style, but you have games like games like Hunt Down and Shovel Knight and Katana Zero that all have a pixel art style, but yet they have so much content and so much effort put into them that they're unique experiences that you won't find on AAA series. And that's one thing.
Ukulele, high quality 3D platformer, stuff like that, right?
Oh, definitely. And I mean, games even like Thumper. Thumper, I had a great time with. It's hard as hell, but it's a 3D rhythm based, I guess say action game. And you don't see concepts like these done in AAA games, and because of that, it catches the interest of people like me and you, right? We see all these unique games coming out quickly because the indie market has gotten so big, and everyone's able to make games much better and easier. It's become easier for companies to get funding and to make their games because there are a lot of ideas out there. You almost keep thinking we're going to run out of originality, but it doesn't look like we have. That's what's actually really impressive. I mean, like, just this year, right? Hades. Hades is by Supergiant Games, and that game has been nominated how many times now? And it's huge. It's this huge indie game, and sometimes they take a long time to make, but it's very impressive. I'd say the indie market is the number one reason right now where the gaming market feels as flooded as it does, and you would think it wouldn't be that way based on how it was back then. So because of this, though, the amount of high-quality indies that have been impressing you and I, it causes our wish lists that I remember even back then when I had a wish list, it was pretty decent, right? Small, decent-sized wish list. And now I have these humongous wish lists on, like, my PS4 or PS5 now. My Nintendo Switch has a absolutely ridiculous wish list that I don't know if I'll ever be able to get everything on it. And they're constantly, like, games coming out on sale, right? And then you have the AAA games that come out like ever so often throughout the year, and those are the games you keep thinking, oh, I want to get those. I want to get those right off the bat, or I'm going to pay like, full price for those. And all it does is kind of increase. So when you're like playing other things, here comes out a AAA game. You're like playing some indies, right? And then a AAA game comes out here and you're like, ooh, and you start like jumping in on that. And then you're like putting in time into that. And then you put off the indie, and then you get back to the indie. But then sometimes before you even finish that indie, some other indie comes out that you're kind of interested in. Well, now, for me, it's an issue. I have a focus issue where I constantly like a lot of variety, and sometimes it causes me to probably bounce back and forth between games a little too much. I've been trying to get a little better at
and
that.
I'm the same way, really. But you know what I love about indies, and this goes hand in hand with the Switch, and it's not a surprise to anybody that's been listening to us already that I'm a big fan of Nintendo and the Switch.
Oh, yeah.
But what I love about indies is that, when I play the Xbox Series X or the PS5 now, or even some Switch games, generally you might want to play on the, on your big screen TV with your nice sound system if you have it. And you get that whole experience, right? But, sometimes you don't want to occupy the TV, either because you have, you want to watch the news or show, or maybe you have family members that want to occupy the TV. So then I get the Switch, and I could chip away at a bunch of indie games I have, like Bloodstain and, Hot Shot Racings, Hyper Drifter.
Hyper Light Drifter?
Hyper Light Drifter. Yeah, I don't know, Stardew Valley, I'm sorry. Xeno Crisis, whatever. I could name 100 of them. And I just sit there on my couch and I just chip away one by one a little bit at these indie games while I might be watching, a scary movie with the kids and the wife or whatever the case may be. And I could do that on the Xbox, sure, but then I'm occupying the main TV while I'm playing, I don't know, what is it, the Xeno Crisis, and there's nothing wrong with that. The game is absolutely gorgeous. In fact, I own it for the Sega Genesis, believe it or not. They released it on cart, but yeah, it's awesome. But I tend to reserve the TV for more kind of grandiose AAA games, and that's how I've kind of dealt with time constraint. Smaller games portably for the most part, and bigger games on the TV.
Yeah, that's a smart idea, because it's kind of similar with me, right? Now, I would say there's a decent amount of big games I have for my Switch, and even some indies actually are much larger than than I actually think. But I do like to play most of my indies on my Switch, and I almost feel that the allure of the Switch caused me to buy more indie games that I probably would have put off much longer. So I kind of feel it's a great thing, it's a bad thing for me, because let's say I didn't have a Switch, right, and I only had like a PS4. I don't think I would put as much time buying indie games for some reason. I don't know why. I just feel the Switch is such a perfect hybrid of a system that you feel when you get something for it, you will be able to take it with you anywhere. It's a wonderful feeling. I feel like Nintendo like struck gold with the Nintendo Switch. That I used to make a joke that they, over time when the Switch came out, that they just decided to grab Steam and they just decided to like dump all of its games. Like they're like holding a bucket of Steam and they're just like dumping it onto the Nintendo eShop over time. And that's actually helped. It helped the Switch's momentum hugely, was Nintendo pushing the indie market, and now you actually get indie directs, actually showcasing these things.
Well, you know what's funny? So I have the Xbox Game Pass, which I think is the best deal in gaming.
That's true.
And it has totally a lot of these indies on there.
Yeah.
And this might be... Okay, I know this is going to sound silly and stupid, so I fully admit it. But there's times where I buy an indie game that's on Xbox Gamer Pass, but I buy it on Switch. And the reason is, one, because I want it portably. And two, I tend to play games that I actually paid money for more often than games that I'm sampling from Game Pass or whatever. So there might be an indie game. What was the latest one that came out? Which one's the one you're playing right now?
Oh, well, I'm playing a lot actually right now.
Yeah, the new indie game.
I have like 2 or 3 new indie games this month. Oh, hold on, let me think.
That new 2D one that came out.
Oh yeah, pardon me. Narita Boy.
There you go.
Narita Boy.
Yes. I downloaded that one on Game Pass, and I played it for 10 minutes, and I liked what I played of, but then I deleted it from my hard drive. Right?
And then let me guess. Did you buy it on the Switch?
No, that is not an example of one that I did buy, but there's other examples of games that I downloaded on Game Pass. I tried it out, and then I said, you know what? That's a cool game. I want this on Switch, and then I spent money on it. Is that reasonable? Is that smart?
Well,
I mean, probably not. Maybe, but maybe not smart financially. But you know what? One, I got to play portably, and two, it does make a difference, I feel, when you actually spend money on something. It's almost like you're obligated to play it, right? Because or else you're even doubly stupid. Because now you could have played it on Game Pass, and I didn't. Then I spent money on it, and I didn't play it. So then I just kind of double dipped on it, and so I do tend to play games more often than I buy.
Well, actually, you make a valid point, because when we get to the second section of here, that's actually something I really want to touch upon, regards to the Xbox Game Pass and the idea of sales. For me right now, it's slightly like, it's kind of weird, okay? So, you know how you sometimes make a joke that you call me I'm cheap? You'll mention a game to me like, you should totally get this.
That's no joke, Joseph. I'm stating facts.
But like the thing is, like, so me, right, when I got the Xbox Game Pass, Microsoft actually, even in the past, started doing the indie thing, probably even a little more before Nintendo. They were like the ones that tried to pick up quite a bit of steam on it, and they had their own indie section or indie little presentation recently, and they're big on releasing, like, they have this huge timeline of like 20 indie games that are releasing on day one on the Xbox Game Pass. Now, I'm very tempted on that reason. Now, I do get that feeling where I'm like, do I want to buy it on the Switch because it's portable if it runs really, really well? Or do I want to not pay for it and play on the Xbox Game Pass? So I'm actually very divided on these things. It's the same reason why I haven't played Spiritfarer. I haven't downloaded Spiritfarer. Oh my gosh, I want to play the game so much. But it's on the Xbox Game Pass. I haven't downloaded it from there because I feel like if it runs really well on the Switch, I'd prefer to play the game on the Switch. And even then, this is one of the things where you were mentioning, like, when you buy something, you feel obligated to buy it. For me, it's slightly different. I have a thing where psychologically, when I think about it, well, if you can play it on the Xbox, right, and you're probably going to play it on your big TV, and you might play Spiritfarer on the big TV, even on your Switch. Why do you want it for the Switch? And the reason I can tell in my head is I'm giving my excuse that I'm going, well, it's a portable. But then the other part of me is going, but I like those games on my Switch. Like it's just that thing where it's a preference that, even though I feel like it's not 100% sensical, but it feels like that's the type of game I want on my Switch.
Well, you could get into trouble as though getting stuff on Switch, because stuff like Steamworld Quest or whatever,
great
Dead
game,
Cells.
By the way. Loved it.
Oh, yeah. No, I love the Steamworld games, and Dead Cells, Transistor, stuff like that. Scott Pilgrim. You know what they all have in common? They're kind of 2D games that the Switch could run pretty easily, or at least comparably to the competition.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you start getting into stuff like Dead by Daylight and Fortnite, etc., I wish that there was crossplay in every single game. No, not well. Yes, crossplay for sure, but cross save progression, right, or cross progression. I that for sure, because then what happens is I bought Dead by Daylight on my Switch originally. It's been the main console for that game, and I did it because my friend only owned a Switch at the time. And, now I have a Series X, and Dead by Daylight looks gorgeous on the Series X. But, guess what? If I play it on there, I don't have any of my progression, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, wait, so you're talking about, because I know there's cross-play, which actually cross-plays when you're playing with other people on different systems. You're talking about just cross-progression. Cross-progression.
Yes. I mean, a game should have both.
Yeah.
But cross-progression, really... it's what I'm talking about, and that's so I could play. If I started playing on my Switch originally, then I could easily move over to my Series X if I wanted to and carry on my progression. Or if I want to play portably, I can. And then if I feel like playing on the TV, then I'll play it on the Xbox. But at the moment, I can't do that on Dead by Daylight, and there's other games as well that I can't do that on. And that's something that really should be universal: cross-play and cross progression. There's no excuse for that not being universal, I feel.
I mean, I think there probably are some reasons. I think some developers can do it easier than others, but I think a good example that, like how you mentioned having the ability to move this stuff over, actually, as I mentioned before, was Hades, right? So Hades came out on only Steam and Switch. That's how you know they knew their audience. It came out on Steam and Switch, right? And the funny thing is they were hoping to release the game with the save data cross between Steam and, but they weren't able to, so they kind of delayed it. They didn't want to delay the game, so they said in an update, we hope in the next month or two we can have the the save data back and forth working, and they did recently have it working. And for me, that's a great thing, right? Because I love playing Hades. Now it runs at like 720, 60 FPS on the Switch with a couple of slowdowns when it gets really actiony, but it's fine. I'm fine with that.
It runs at 720 on the Switch?
It does.
Really?
But because it runs at a smooth 60. Oh, it's so wonderful. But it sometimes has, the little judder when things get really, really hectic. There's a lot of effects. Now, it's still a great looking game, right? But when you play it on portable, oh my goodness, that game is a gem. It is beautiful in portable mode, right? I can imagine,
because Transistor looks amazing portably as well. So
yeah, and so I told myself eventually when I have a PC, right, if I want to get Hades on sale, because it goes on sale on Steam every now and then I can do the cross save thing. So if I want to play on my PC in higher resolution or frame rate or whatever, right, I just play on the PC. But then if I take it go with me, I just move the save data over and I'm playing on my Switch, and that for me is really cool. Now I don't have a PC yet, but just to have that option available is really something nice. And you're right. I do wish more games did that. I feel like it's a little bit more common, but we're not 100% there yet of all the systems trying to work together, 100%. So I'm glad we actually touched upon that, because as we mentioned before, the gaming market is huge now. It's huger than it's ever been. There's lots of games for us to play, and yeah, I haven't gotten to there are games in my backlog on my Switch that I got on sale, and I haven't I haven't even played them, or I started them and I dabbled in them, and I want to get back to them, but then everything else keeps coming out that I want, and I end up, and that's where we get into this next subject that I think is very, very important. And that is, deals. Those big gaming deals that have been really, I'd say really prevalent lately. Deals are everywhere. I know Steam was like the one that supposedly started it with these huge sales and deals that everyone was bragging about back in the time when you had a PC. Steam had where you could get games like AAA games and indie games at such discounted prices. But then you could tell the competition started doing it hugely, right? Sony started doing a bit of its own. Nintendo hugely, I think, looked at Steam and mimicked it, right? So you have these wish lists now on the eShop that we have. I have this huge wish list, right? And I gradually check if there are sales on my wish list, because they have sales almost all the time. And some of them are pretty amazing, and unfortunately that causes the same thing I mentioned earlier about, that bamboozlement of, oh, when do I buy it? Oh, should I buy this one? It's on my wish list. Do I really want to get it? Should I put my time into it? Do I have time to play it? And even if you have the money for it, the sale could be great. It could be an amazing sale. And that's the part that I feel it starts to become a little troublesome, because there's a lot of eye-catching games that I've recently told myself, maybe I can wait. A sale's always going to happen. So
yeah, because you could become a digital pack rat.
Yes.
So, you
Good
see
God, yeah.
games on sale, and you're like, well, I don't have time to play it, but it was $50 and now it's $14.99.
I'm grabbing my
lose
hand.
money.
I'm grabbing my hand on my
I would be stupid
analog.
not to buy it, right?
Don't press the A button, Joseph.
It's costing me money not to get it, and then you buy it and you deal with the storage constraints, and then you have it there. You have it as an icon there, so I guess you feel better. I guess you sleep better at night. Maybe who knows?
You feel better, but then after a while you look at that icon. Yeah.
You try it out for a minute, and then you probably don't play it again for months or something.
And then it becomes an icon where you end up going through your list and you're going, oh, right, I remember you. I still need to play you. And for me,
you know what it is?
That's a problem.
It's like gacha games, right? It's like that Fire Emblem game.
Oh, yeah, Fire Emblem Heroes.
You pay, and then you all you're getting really to satisfy that lizard part of your brain is a picture of a character. And you're like, yes, now I have this artwork in a collection of artwork. I feel a little better in my life. I guess that's what buying a new game is nowadays. You're buying it and you get the little icon and you're like, I got that icon. I could sleep a little tiny bit better.
Well,
I might not play this game ever. I might die. This is the sad part. No, I'm not even joking you.
No, I know.
I might die without passing a good 60% of the games I bought, if not more. That is morbid, but it's a true statement. I can only hope that my kids pick up the baton and pass some of these games.
We've left digital legacies.
In my will, I'll leave a list of games I did not finish, and hopefully they could finish. It's almost like Jumanji. Things start getting worse and worse until somebody finishes the game.
Yeah, and that is a good analogy. I like that. But yeah, I mean, as I said, this is where we get into that thing where you see a game and maybe you were eyeing it for a while, right? You're eyeing it for a while, you like how it is, and at least I'm happy with the fact that before I buy any game on sale, I check the reviews. I check the reviews quite a bit before I buy any game, because then sometimes it allows me to remove games off my wish list, which I think is something I've done way more in the past years, where I'm I've always been I wouldn't say a snob, but I've been a snob in regards to whatever. I'm a snob when it comes to reviews. Okay, so I really vet the games, and sometimes there'll be games that are rated decently, right? But then I can see that to the people who rated it well, of what they liked about it, and if it speaks to me in that same way, then I will get it. And some of those games I 100% had played, 100% played, and I really loved them, and I can see why not everyone likes them. So those type of sales kind of get me every now and then. And usually I try to wait these days until they're like super cheap, right? Like the game Dex. Not everyone likes the game Dex. And not, I know it sounds kind of confusing because I think about it. There was another game called Gex, I think, way back then.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the lizard game.
Exactly. I knew you were thinking
N64.
of that. I'm surprised I remembered that game. We played it on PC. But Dex is like this kind of, call it cyber noir detective side-scroller game that I actually really liked, but it wasn't 100% amazingly rated. But there were things about it that I really liked. And I played a bit of it right now. Played a bit of it right now, and I really liked it. And I told myself, you need to play more of that game then, because if you get it, I got it cheap, right? $2. I got on sale for $2. It took a while. Before it went to $2, right? But that kind of thing gets you. That $2.
So was it originally $2.99 and you're like, nah,
Funny,
son.
no.
I'm gonna wait 2
No.
years until you drop, and then you finally pull the trigger at $2?
No.
Sly dog.
It was $20. Thank you very much. It was $20. All right. I don't fall for that. Anyway, so and okay, but then there are some indie games, right, that will go on a sale where they were like let's say $25, and you'll get them for like $7 off. Now, I only get those games if I really wanted to get that indie, okay? Like, if I played a demo of it and I loved it, I will only sometimes get those indies that are only like $7 off, which is still a good amount, like from $25 to $18, right? I will get those if I really want it, and I'll finally bite the bullet, because it'll go on sale multiple times, and I'll deny myself. I'll say later. But then on a good month, I'll just be like, you know what? I want that. And hell, so far I'm playing that game actually quite a bit, and I'm loving it. It's a hardcore mecha. I love it. Smooth art style, beautiful game in portable mode, high quality game too. I love it. Like, so far I'm really, really loving its aesthetic and its gameplay. Very, very nice. But when you end up actually buying like a good deal, like you see an indie Yvonne, and you're kind of like, ooh, I've been waiting for that one to go on sale for a while. When you end up getting it, do you sometimes feel like you're playing like a game currently or multiple games currently, but then you see that game and you're like, oh, I've always wanted that one, and you end up just snatching it up? Does the thought of time ever like come into your head? Like, as soon as you get it, you're like, I've been waiting for a while, it's greatly rated, and you just buy it, and then you're like, right, I'm playing other things, so then do you move on from whatever you're playing to play it, or does it kind of, fall to the wayside for like a while, and then you're like, oh right, I remember I wanted to play you?
A little bit. Yeah, time did come into consideration for sure, but if I'm being honest, not as much as it should have. Like, if I saw the game and it was a really good price, I got it, especially early on in the Switch's life when I just wanted games to play.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what the biggest deterrent is? Really, it's just storage space. So I went from like a 200 gig card to a 400 gig card to 500. I don't know exactly. I hope these are real sizes. So I mean, but then
I'm up to like a terabyte now.
And then I got the terabyte one for Black Friday, as did you, and I filled it up. And now I'm right back to where I was before, which is using two SD cards. And I'm like, man, it sucks. I have to keep switching again, right? The reason I spent so much money on the terabyte is so I wouldn't have to switch. So the biggest deterrent when I see a sale is like, oh, I want you so bad, but look at this, you're like 6 gigs, or you're like 10 gigs, or you're like 20 gigs. I don't want to do that because you're not going to be on my main memory card, or I might have to delete stuff, whatever. And if I'm honest, that's been the biggest deterrent. So there's stuff on my wish list that have gone on sale multiple times. It's just, the storage space is what's keeping me back. And the realization that I have so many games that I've yet to put any significant time in. I really should before I buy more games.
Yeah, and that's I think you being what you could say definitely like older than me, and definitely more like the retro gamer. I feel like
how dare you?
Yeah.
Hey.
I said retro
you,
gamer, retro
Don't
gamer.
age
I said
shame me on my own show.
I'm trying to make a point here, Yvonne. So let me make the point. The point I'm trying to say is, since you've lived longer, you obviously have more games than I. So as I said, like for me, I still have a good amount of space on my Switch left, right? Like a good sizable, I'd say like maybe a...
Would you say that I am a 1 terabyte card and you are a 200 gig card as far as lifespans are concerned?
Lifespan? Okay, lifespans, sure. But, if you really think about it, I'm the one with actual space on my console. So anyways, the thing is that...
That's true. There is a lot of space in your head that's yet to be filled up. That is true.
We're doing deep cuts on this podcast now, aren't we?
Right, I am going to concede to that.
Tisk, Yvonne. I'm just trying to make a point here. Anyways, okay, so the thing I was talking about before you derailed me was that there are many reasons why we start waiting longer. Now, in your case, you mentioned the storage space thing, which I would say in some cases kind of, I wouldn't say it's like a benefit, but I'd say like in a way you're kind of thinking like, I can wait. And for me, it was around the beginning similar, right? I was like, oh, cool, finally, that game's on sale. Oh, cool, that game's on sale. Some of them I didn't even wait for sales if I really wanted it. But over time, I feel like both you and I have kind of slowed down a bit, right? We're kind of like, whoa, sales happen all the time. You're kind of looking around like shifty eyes, and you're kind of going like, okay, you over there, like you've been on sale how many times now? You can either be, and you're either thinking you can either be lower or you're always going to be on sale someday. So it's not like there's any rush. And that for me, going into that.
Like Doom Eternal for the Switch, it just went on sale at 50%, so $29.99. I guarantee you, at some point, that game's going to be $14.99.
Yeah, but for me, that's not really like an allure. Dude, one thing, I've never been allured by Doom or Doom Eternal on the Switch. And I think it's just because I played it on the Xbox. And I loved it. And I'm like, on the Switch.
I have like a fetish for playing games like Doom and Doom Eternal.
Let it be known on the record, he has a fetish.
It is in my permanent record, that's for sure. But I have this thing for playing these games that have no business being in these underpowered machines, like the original Doom on the Super Nintendo, etc. And then somehow somebody making a miracle port to a lower spec machine. So I get some enjoyment out of playing, Doom or Doom Eternal on the Switch and being like, holy crap, I can't believe the Switch is playing this thing.
Yeah,
is it highly compromised? Sure. But you know what? I don't know. I think it's neat.
It is neat. I'd say for me, the biggest one that I've almost bought multiple times because it's gone on a good sale quite often was actually Crysis Remastered. Oh man, I've almost gotten that game on sale multiple times because it's very impressive. Yeah.
Great game.
So, I still stop myself because the thing that starts to get to me at the moment is literally like, do I want to play it? Am I going to put time into it? And I have many things on my backlog that I'm already really enjoying, so why not just wait? Like, there's no rush. And I think for me, this has been the hugest little psychological thing for me getting more into gaming was because there are many, many games you don't have money to get them, right? You don't have money to get them. You can't play them. You're kind of waiting, and the gaming community doesn't wait for nobody. So it just kind of, keeps getting, more packed. So I kept getting this feeling like, well, everyone keeps talking about these games. I'm like missing out on these experiences, missing out on these like games. And you start to feel like you're getting left behind trying to play catch up. And I told myself over time, like, you don't need to feel that way because these things are always going to be there. There's no rush. There's no rush to play these things. There's no rush to do it. And it's kind of a thing you end up getting. And the more you get, the more sometimes you feel kind of rushed. I know it's not a thing for everyone, but the main thing I know everyone talks about in the game community is, oh my God, my backlog. Like, it is a common thing for people to go, oh my God, our backlogs, or oh, just another thing to add to our backlog. Because that over time, you'll get to it, but you aren't really sure. And I think that's the odd thing about being a gamer is I love being a gamer. It's fun and exciting, and there's so many wonderful experiences, but you got to keep a bit of a leash on yourself, especially when you're, working for a living and you don't have as much time to play these games. It gets kind of harder, harder to like put time, especially when you have some games that can take like five hours, right? Those are like really short ones. You can beat them really quickly. Then there's some that are 10 hours. You're like, oh, that's a good length. Then you have some that are 20, and then you got RPGs that are like 40, and we're getting like AAA games here, right? So it's this massive divide between the indie backlog and then your AAA games that you want to get and also play. And hell, the thing I wanted to mention was that it starts to get into that concern of the services, right? The services that we're getting these days that you pay for subscription-wise, right? If I want to actually move in to the next stage here, and that is, originally the indie market became big, and things went on sale, right? But now you have big hitting games, like going on massive sales pretty quickly sometimes. I think you mentioned about like Immortals Phoenix Rising. I got the name right this time. God, I was so embarrassed how I said it in the last episode. Now they go like on sale really quickly. Or these deals always come back, right? I think Doom Eternal has been on sale on Switch like multiple times, like half off multiple times. And you have these AAA games that are going on discounts. You have them on services now. And sometimes it increases a bit of that adding to backlog, where you're not just adding to an indie backlog. No, you're adding to like a AAA backlog. And all these games coming out at the same time. So my question is do you feel more obliged to buy a AAA game that's on a massive sale than you do an indie? Like, do you get a lot more of that, like, oh my god, I can finally get that game, or oh, I was waiting, or oh, it's actually off? Do you get more of that feeling like it's you feel obliged?
Not really, not anymore. I used to. I would say maybe in the 360 PS3 era, if I did see a AAA game early on and it was a big sale was going on, then I would say like, holy crap, I can't believe Uncharted is like at $20 or $10 or whatever, and I would jump on it right away because I'm like, what fools, right? It's a AAA game. I can't believe they're giving it away for this much. But now it's just become such a common thing that I expect it. I rarely buy now a AAA game at full price. I just don't. For one, I have more patience because I have so many games to play and I have my family and time is precious. A lot less. Yeah, it's a limited commodity. So, when Resident Evil Village comes out, you know what? I'm not going to buy it at launch. I'm just going to wait. And in Black Friday or around that time, when it goes on sale for $14.99 or $20 or probably even $10, then I might consider picking it up. But even then, there's no hurry because I know that it will be cheap. And then another thing I take into consideration is that for instance, Resident Evil 7, I did not buy it at launch. I waited until it went on sale, and it did quite a few times, and I didn't quite pull the trigger. And I'm glad I did because then Capcom came out with what? The Gold Edition, right? And then I waited a couple months, and guess what? I got the Gold Edition for $10. And that came with everything. Just how I got Horizon Zero Dawn, the complete edition, for $10. Does every game get down to $10? No. The majority of them, God of War, $10. I could really go down the list, and most of them I got for $10, $15, right? Remember I got Kingdom Hearts, the complete collection.
You told me. I couldn't believe
Kingdom
that.
Hearts
No,
1,
I couldn't believe that.
2, 3, everything for what was it? $14.99 or $10. I think it was $10.
That's like $100 collection.
Something like that, right? But anyways, so I just gotta have a little bit of patience. Now, you could argue that I have to wait to play these games. It's okay. I have more than enough games to play. More than enough. So it's easier to be patient when you have such a big backlog. And then when the AAA game gets down to whatever a cheap price, yeah, I might consider buying it. If not, I'm not going to sweat it because even if the physical edition becomes rare, there's always digital sales anyways that are comparable.
That's very true.
Yeah, and especially now that games have gone up to $70. I know there's a big hoopla about games going up to $70. It didn't matter to me really, not
because it's still the same kind of concept you're gonna pull
exactly
on.
Because they're still gonna drop down to $10 ultimately. So the ceiling is higher, but the floor is the same. When it's gonna hurt me is when Nintendo ups their prices because I tend to buy Nintendo games.
That's true.
Close to launch.
And in AAA Nintendo games too, they don't go on great sales.
They hold their price, yeah.
I'd say lowest they get is $45 most of the time.
So that's gonna hurt more when it happens. But yeah, I guess that's the long answer to your question that I don't jump on it right away because it's normal to me. And in fact, even when some games go down to what I consider my price, I might still hold off on it because I don't have time to play it.
That actually makes a lot of sense because that's true for me as well these days that AAA games go on sale all the time now. And so sometimes I'll see a sale and I go, ooh, I want that one. But I'll look at the price and I go, nah, I can wait longer.
When you speak, I hear silence. Every word a defiance.
thing that I mentioned that I wanted to talk about a little later in this episode was the mention of Xbox Game Pass, right? So you now have larger incentives, right, to not pay, okay, to pay like these large prices or hell, even sales, right?
Well, can I give you an example? So Gears of War 5. Gears of War 5. I bought it for $10. And even then, I'm like, did I get ripped off? Not ripped off, because it's an amazing game. It's a great game. But I guess in the sense that I could just play it on Game Pass.
Yeah, the whole thing with every single ounce of content. And let's be real,
the physical edition is nothing but a key. That's all it is. The disc is a glorified key to let you play the game. So there's not a whole lot of difference between owning the disc and having it on Game Pass, other than the stupid disc that acts as a key. And I guess I bought it because, I have Gears of War 1, 2, 3 physically. I have 4 physically, quotation marks, because it's just a glorified key. And I couldn't bear to not have Part 5 sit on my shelf next to all of them. That is really the only reason I got it physically. But nowadays with Game Pass, do you really need to buy it physically?
No.
not unless it's not on Game Pass. Then I might wait.
Dude, it's weird though. When it comes to now AAA games, because the Xbox Game Pass is such a good deal, still the greatest deal. And I want to make sure we're saying this properly. Actually, the whole other episodes, I've been saying Gamer Pass. It's been Game Pass. So
I caught myself too. I said it on this episode. I caught myself, yeah.
Yeah, and I realized, oh my god, we've been saying the thing.
I'm going to chalk it up to your inexperience.
Oh, wow, okay.
And your influence rubbing off on me.
Actually, what I could chalk it up to is you just following my lead. You're just kind of like I'm like the wolf. And
you
like
are
the
right.
sheep.
When you follow the blind off a cliff, you have nobody to blame but yourself.
So anyways, we're saying it right now. Thank God. Okay, so
I can sleep better at night.
And to think that I've had the Xbox Game Pass for months now, and I was saying it wrong on that whole episode. Anyways, shame for shame for shame. Okay, so
and I never say anything wrong on this podcast.
Oh, sure, all right.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone, quickly fact check. Go to the other episodes. Okay, no. Come back with responses later.
Everybody,
message
take a shot every time you hear me mispronounce something. Go.
Oh, Mr. Splatoon. Anyways, we were talking about that earlier. Anyways, okay, so
you're splat. Never mind.
Sorry. Nope, not gonna get you that one. Okay, so the thing is we were talking about how I feel that with the Xbox Game Pass, right? I feel less of incentive to pay for AAAs now, right? I have a whole year. I know. Even with the indies, I start going looking at the Switch and I go, do I want you portably? And if I don't care to play it portably, I'm like, okay, Xbox Game Pass, hit me. So the thing is I have this huge amount of, in fact, almost all, I kid you not, almost all the games I have on my Xbox Series X are from the Xbox Game Pass. And they're huge games, right? Doom Eternal, Titanfall 2, Dishonored. It's funny I'm mentioning mostly first person, but Naruto Boy, which is the indie game. You have games like Dragon Quest 11, right? Now, those games, I don't feel like I have to wait to pay anymore. I don't need to spend my money. I paid for a whole year, and I can do whatever the hell I want with it, right? So it's a huge incentive, but then for me, that also, unfortunately, I get on my Xbox Game Pass, I look at all those icons, and you run into the same issue that you do on your Switch, and that is, wow, right, I need to get around to playing that sometime, or I want to get around to playing that sometime.
But you know what's funny? And I hope I pronounce this correctly, probably not, but I bought Atelier Ryza 1 and 2 almost at full price on Switch. These kind of super niche JRPGs, I bought them at $50 or $40, whatever.
And then they went on sale.
Basically almost at full price. And here I am bitching about waiting for God of War to be at $10 and Spider-Man at $10.
I know, these are flagship game of the year.
I know. They're like AAA, crazy high production value games, and I'm like, nah, I'm gonna wait for the Game of the Century edition to come out, and then I'll wait for it to drop to $10. But no, some obscure Japanese game with bouncy physics, yeah, here's my card number for sure.
I mean, okay, I'd say this. I almost feel like for you, when it comes to those AAA games, just look at what you said on the podcast. You're like, hey, I got all these AAA games, blockbuster games for $10. I'm like, you waited for bragging rights. So I'm like, there you go. See, Yvonne, he likes the bragging rights. I might be cheap, but he does it for the bragging rights. So anyway. So
you know what it is? You know what it is?
what?
It's like if the new Nolan movie came out or something.
Oh,
And I'm like, I'm not gonna catch that in theaters. I'm just gonna wait for this Blu-ray to drop to $4 or whatever on Black Friday. Then maybe I'll buy the Nolan movie or whatever. But then something else comes out that's a much lesser quality, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, full price, no problem.
let's go to the theaters.
Let's go to the theater. Or like, Leprechaun, the 4K edition
no,
at $30. Why not? Give me Leprechaun, please.
Oh, good God.
Yeah,
But-
that's actually a true statement there.
Yeah, but
I was
that's
trying to think of something else other than Leprechaun to save some of my dignity, and I
You're
couldn't
like,
do
nope.
it. So
You're like, nope,
and-
dignity gone.
yeah. So to not have any dead space, I had to use Leprechaun as an example, unfortunately.
Yeah, but it's like I said though, right? Like there's these other options that make you feel less inclined to full price buy these things. Now, don't get me wrong, this year there are a good amount of games that AAA games that I don't mind paying full price for, like Monster Hunter Rise, right? I recently got that. And I used some of my rewards points to, take like $10 or $13 off of it, right? So that was nice. But I'm still pretty much paying for full price. So there's a few games this year, actually quite a few games this year, that I don't mind paying full price. But I do know that sometimes when that time comes, when I think about getting it full price, I'll end up sometimes backpedaling. Like I'm going, do I need to right now? And I start going, yeah, I can wait, right? And they end up waiting, and then before you know it, you realize it's way back there. Like months, it releases months ago. And then you're like, oh yeah, it's on sale. And I feel like it sometimes happens. Like I'll plan to like have a set amount of money to get these, and I'll just kind of go like, I can wait. And then it just continues. It's weird because now there's a great balance between having a lot and not having to pay a lot. Now I'd say that's still the best thing when it comes to games these days is you're getting more for less these days, which is a really nice thing. I think it's actually kind of a boon when it comes to being a gamer, because I remember saying back then being a gamer is expensive.
Well, for sure. Okay, so I agree. You're getting more for less, but I ultimately feel like you're still spending more.
That's true because of quantity. And that's why I've tried to slow down these days. Like there's a set amount of money I dedicate like for games now a month. And it could be a group of small games, or it can be like one big game, right? And I try to do that depending on like what my interests are. And still though, I feel like it needs some polishing. Definitely some polishing in regards to that. But I feel like this is what they definitely call, it's like a hobby, right? You have a hobby. And you just got to make sure, how to manage your hobby. I feel like I manage it much better now than I probably did back then, where you're just kind of, I guess, trying to just enjoy whatever, right? And only over time you start realizing, no, there's a certain point we have to kind of lean back. And life's been good that way. It's been really nice that way. So I feel like we've moved into a better position, but we still need to kind of like keep a tight ring around it sometimes. So now the last question on the subject before we get into our closing little section of this is, do you ever sometimes feel like constantly hearing about games, like new games or news or whatever? Do you sometimes feel like it gets a little like overwhelming or tiring? I mean, for me, it really doesn't. There's a bit of a time where I kind of just, think to my head like, damn, like way too much is coming out too fast, right? But do you ever get the feeling you're kind of like, nah, I'm not interested?
No, because since I don't have as much time as I used to, and games are a hobby, right? So it's like basketball. I used to play basketball every single day, used to be in leagues, etc., etc. I really don't play as much as I used to. In fact, I haven't played in a long, long time. I don't think I even played one single time last year in 2020, and I was in a league in 2019.
Oh, damn, I didn't know that.
But what does that mean? That doesn't mean like I stopped watching basketball. I still watch a lot of basketball. I read up on basketball daily. I'm in a fantasy league. I look at stats all the time, etc., because it's a hobby. So even though I don't actually play it, I'm still very much invested in this hobby, and that's kind of how I see games. So I love reading the news on games. I love hearing about games. I love watching videos about games, listening to podcasts, doing a podcast, and in some cases even buying the games. But I don't necessarily get to play them all the time. So they might go on the shelf, or they might go in storage in an SD card or a hard drive or whatnot. Or I might just enjoy watching a video in Digital Foundry about it, or talking about it on said podcast.
Or hell, even watch the kids playing it too.
Yeah, I don't know about that. No, they're into stuff like Naver and Human Fall Flat and stuff like that. It's kind of funny. I mean, but really, it's more like, look, Daddy, I'm hanging off his booty, while playing Human Fall Flat or something like that. So, yeah, I'm talking about when I say a hobby. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to get people get the impression that I don't love spending time with my kids or whatever, but I see games more as a hobby in the sense of like, oh wow, look at the new God of War that's coming, or Last of Us 1 is being remade, stuff like that, right? They really kind of spark my interest, or Monster Hunter Rise, hearing your opinions and other people's opinions about it, and the only reason I haven't pulled the trigger is because while I love hearing about that game and I love watching videos and hearing your opinions, I don't have the time to play it right now. That game terrifies me. It really does. That game terrifies me.
It's a good consumption of time for sure, and it's actually me taking the chance on it once again, because the thing that put me off of Monster Hunter back then was because a lot of it got spoiled for me of my brother kind of showing me like multiple things of it, when that's actually kind of the incentive of Monster Hunter. It's like, oh, what monsters can you take down? How do you learn their moves? And the intense fights you do to take them out, and then what can you build from them, right? And for me, that's like the biggest thing for Monster Hunter. And with this current one, I knew what I was getting into. I was like, oh, I'm finally going to get back into the Monster Hunter franchise. It's been a long time. And so finally getting into it, I've been really enjoying it. There was a tiny bit of concern. Like, am I going to spend time in this game? And so far, I've been spending a good amount where I put some time into it, and I'm really enjoying it so far. It's got me back into it. They're those games where you sometimes just they're kind of time absorbers. You sometimes feel like they're a game that can go on for countless hours. So you play it for a set amount of time while then working on maybe like a game that has, an end, right? More of an end to its progression, which it's a good thing.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And if I may interrupt you for a second.
You may.
Dead by Daylight. For me, that's a perfect example of a game
I see you on
that I have to balance. I mean, I put in almost 500 hours, maybe between 400 and 500. For me, for other people, that's probably not a whole lot. I'm sure people have poured in thousands of hours into Destiny, or maybe I have a friend who's put in like 1,500 hours into Smash Ultimate and stuff like that. But for me, 400 hours plus in a game, that's insane, man. That's insane.
A game that has no end either.
It has no end. Yeah, it has no end. It's a service game, right? And those are 400 hours that could have gone into a bunch of games. I mean, I could only imagine how many games I would have taken off my list or my backlog if I had applied those 400 hours into those games. So it's a balance. I cannot play too many games like Dead by Daylight. I cannot play Dead by Daylight and Fortnite and Realm Royale or any of the other service games, because I just can't. I will never finish any game at all if I poured what little time I have into these games. Like Apex, I'm sure is great. What I played of it is cool. Rocket League is a lot of fun, but it's just no end to those games. That's pretty much the end of my point. That amazing games, and I purposely avoid them a lot of times because I have to balance, where my time goes.
No, that's actually a similar thing for me, where I tell myself now these days, just take your time. Spend some time on one thing that you kind of feel like you can finish relatively quickly. One that you're interested in, you can enjoy. Like, I'm enjoying playing Hardcore Mecha and Narita Boy. They're both, games that have a campaign, a beginning, and an end. And I'm really loving them. But then I have like Monster Hunter Rise, which is, a much longer game that has loads of progression, that gets updates and newly added stuff. And while it does technically have like a kind of an end, like it has like a story-like end, but it grows. Like there's so much content in it that it takes a while. It kind of reminds me of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Now, while that definitely is a longer game with a finite end, the amount of content it has like hundreds and hundreds of hours, which, you can sink a lot of time into if you want. So it's just spacing your time out. getting into I guess you could say the last thing to close this pretty much is that you mentioned how over time, it's really nice even as a hobby to just see how games are and to learn about what's changing, what's new, to be excited. And so I think just after decades and decades of, evolution of how the gaming community and gaming companies have changed, it's taken on so much more than originally it started as. Like, you're talking about any kind of experience and every kind of experience is involved in video games, whether it literally looks like moving artwork, stuff you would see like in a cartoon, to fully orchestrated music that can rival that of movies. You have immersive storytelling, you have like seasons of content. They literally have games that call their content seasons, where they literally go on and on and on, right? And you have some that like have a long arching story. And you got voice acting now that is practically full mocap, where it's practically acting. And it's taken on this huge amount of extra effort, but also quality. And yet still appealing to simpler mechanics and styles like in the indie market, and enjoyment for like any single person, which is very impressive. I do believe that there's literally a thing for everyone when it comes to games. Now, not to say that there's downsides to it. There are downsides to it. There's, gotcha games sometimes. Well, I'm not going to chastise them, but some people, when they get a little too involved, they'll end up spending a lot of real money, which I think, can be that caveat I got to be careful for, or microtransactions and loot boxes and stuff like that.
Let me tell you what I like about games like Fortnite. I like that they at least tell you what you're buying.
Exactly.
So while I have not spent money on Fortnite outfits and stuff like that, I don't have a problem with somebody else spending their money on that, because they know exactly what they're buying, I'm assuming. So there is no, holy crap, I got a 0.5% chance of getting, whatever, yeah. So, that's at least that's what I like about Fortnite. Now, what I don't like about the Fortnite format is, so, like Rocket League, I paid full price for Rocket League. And now I went to free to play. So, okay, well, I guess. I paid full price for Dead by Daylight. In fact, I paid, I think, $40 for Dead by Daylight. And you know what? Dead by Daylight, its format is 100% exactly like a free to play game. 100%. So, then why did you charge me $40 for it then? People might say, you know what? Yes, the hard, developers put in a lot of hard work into the game. It's their right. They reserve the right to charge whatever they want for their hard work, and it's respect. But the problem is you're being judged by other games that are similar, right? The content in Dead by Daylight, it's been out for a while, so it's mature, but so has Fortnite. So the content in Fortnite and Dead by Daylight and, now games like Apex and, games like that, the content is similar, Warframe, stuff like that. I mean, the content is... They're coming out with the same amount of content. The gameplay is different, sure. So then I'm just struggling to see what Dead by Daylight's offering that's different from those other games. And again, it's in their right to charge whatever they want. But it just makes me feel a little bit like, I paid $40, but you're giving me a free to play format on top of that. And this stuff is expensive, man. Like the clothing. You know what's funny? Not to get on a tangent, but the characters themselves aren't too bad to unlock. I mean, they do take quite a bit of while. Luckily, I have kids, so they log into my account and they farm the currency. Yeah, I let them play Dead by Daylight, come at me. But if you want to buy clothes, it's ridiculous. You could buy like 3 characters or 2 characters for what a generic, ugly-ass Kmart shirt cost in that game. So it's obvious to me that the money is in the cosmetic stuff like clothing, etc. That's really where the money is, and they really do charge a premium for that stuff.
No, you're right, because most free-to-play games are free-to-play because all the cosmetics are the things that, while you can earn them and unlock them, sometimes, by just playing.
But, I mean, you get, generic stuff, and they take forever to unlock.
No, that's what I mean. I'm saying as in they purposely put the height so high. Like, even, I have a bit of an issue with that with even Apex Legends, right? But Apex Legends is free. So I see what you exactly mean. Like, the format is expensive based on that free-to-play format, yet you had to pay money for it. And I think that's what Rocket League eventually changed, right? It became free to play. They took away loot boxes, and instead they just make you pay for something you want.
I wish what they would do is so I guess the reason it was $40 is because like they added some characters. It was like an edition that had extra characters compared to the vanilla edition, whatever. But I almost wish that they would say, okay, you pay $40 and you gain double the amount of currency. You know,
Oh, yeah.
because you could buy some clothing and stuff with the currency that you earn, but God, that stuff is just so slow, man. Like it's
Yeah.
insanely slow. You could
That's
spend
purposeful.
50 hours of your life
Mm.
and not even have enough to buy a shirt, not even close. So I almost wish that, hey, you know what? I bought the full game for $40. Let me get double, experience or double currency or whatever. So instead of taking 75 hours or 100 hours to unlock a shirt, maybe it takes me 20 hours, right? Or 25 hours. I mean, that's still 20 hours of your life, but at least it's not ridiculous like 100 hours of your life, or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. That I don't know. Maybe I'm way off here. I'm not an expert. I didn't think of this ahead of time, so maybe all these suggestions are just stupid. Who knows? I just, at the end of the day, I just felt scummy. It felt scummy for me to pay full price for a game and still have the free-to-play model.
Yeah, then you could only imagine technically how the people who originally bought Star Wars Battlefront 2 felt. Full price game with loot boxes. Oh my god. Anyways,
Or
that
NBA 2K.
Oh,
Which,
yeah, let's just say we're going to shelve that one just for the reason that if we ever
that
do talk
one,
about loot boxes
that
and
one is
catastrophes,
something else.
oof, yeah.
Especially coming from the somebody that played the first game on the Dreamcast.
Mm-hmm.
To see what happened to that game, which is like, I'm surprised somebody doesn't come to your door and shake you for your lunch money. That's just ridiculous, man. But anywho, let's move on.
Yeah, a little more positive. But basically, the whole point is that games have changed hugely over the years. They've changed a lot in regards to how they're made. You can see the effect of games everywhere, and they've become its own art, its own incredible medium that involves every kind of facet you can think of. And sure, there are issues, like we mentioned before. There are issues that need to be looked into, and there are things that can feel like you're spending your money and time into something that maybe could have been handled better. And aside from that, though, I still believe that actually that the games are one of the greatest mediums ever created because they've evolved into a bit of everything. There's as I said, there's something for everybody. And I think that's what's actually just very important. I mean, hell, we're talking about it. There's a podcast for it. I know there's countless other podcasts for it and countless other podcasts for other things. If we take enjoyment in these kinds of things because of all the different art, of all the different feelings and enjoyment and passion that you get from such a project that is so prevalent when it comes to just video games itself, I think that's what makes it stand out so wonderfully. And that's why we're still talking about it. That's why we're still wigging out about it. So that's my thoughts on that.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Modern Retrospect. We release new episodes every week on a variety of video game topics as well as having game-specific episodes, along with some other surprises coming soon. We hope you stay tuned.
You can find us on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and everything else. If you enjoy our ramblings, please feel free to subscribe, rate us, or leave a message through email, social media, or voice so we can hear your feedback on today's topic. If you want more retro hits and modern bits, just hop on back. You have a good one.
Bye, everyone.